Hey, it is another edition of the Daily Ramble. I am Karl Schoening, your host. Happy to be talking to you guys today live on YouTube. Or if you're listening to this later, obviously you're listening to it later, but all these broadcasts are live, and happy you tuned in. Got a good one for you today. Talking a little college football, some happenings over the weekend. Obviously, if you were paying attention to the Texas-Oklahoma State game, this will be a good show for you. I have some interesting thoughts on that one. We also have the Texas A&M game. They played Arkansas up there in Jerry World this past weekend on Saturday, so that was a big one too because, Jerry Jones and his Arkansas alma mater, he likes to have that rivalry. He enjoys that rivalry, so certainly some fun things going on this weekend. Couple notes from around the world of sports that we won't touch on today. Today's NBA Media Day. All these NBA teams are having people come in, check out what's going on with their rosters, who's going to be on their team. They're going to do some photos. They're going to have press talking to them. I'm going to divulge all of that tonight once everything's done, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. The Spurs, obviously, I'll be touching on because they're the team I like to talk about. You also have teams like the Cavs, who were in the finals last year, and as of this moment, I don't believe Tristan Thompson has been signed. I'm going to do a quick little search, but pretty sure that Tristan Thompson still hasn't agreed to a deal. Yeah, and ESPN report from 6 hours ago says Tristan Thompson, Cavaliers fail to reach agreement on contract. I would assume that Tristan Thompson's about to take that qualifying offer. We talked about it on the last Daily Ramble. Tristan Thompson wants a lot of money. He wants to be maxed out at $94 million over 5 years. And, my thoughts on that were from the last podcast, but apparently playing a little bit, even just a little bit of Drake's new song, muted my video for copyright claims. There's no fair trade 30 seconds on YouTube sometimes, so even just a little bit muted my video. So learning new things as I get this going, and happy to figure that out. So I'm avoiding copyright laws, but we'll jump right into it as we talk about what we were planning on talking about. Texas Longhorns this weekend lost 30-27 in a heartbreaking fashion to 24th ranked Oklahoma State. For the first time since 1956, the Texas Longhorns started 1-3. And for those of you who aren't up to date on your Texas Longhorn history, that was the season before they brought in Darrell K. Royal. 1956 was pretty much one of the all-time lows for the Texas football program, and I think if you're a Texas fan, now is a good time to not panic. Yeah. I might have messed that up in terms of the wording, but don't panic right now, Texas fans. I was at the Cal game last week. I worked on the Cal broadcast, and as unbiased as I am, they were very biased over at Cal, and they admit that Texas was a lot better than they thought they would be. I thought Texas was a lot better than they would be. I kind of didn't really pay attention to the Rice game because Rice is the only win that Texas has. Notre Dame I didn't really pay attention to because Notre Dame was, way out of Texas's class right now. Texas is easily the best 1-3 team in the country. I don't know what other teams are 1-3. I guess Texas State is as well because they lost to U of H this week. But I'm unbiased when it comes to the Longhorns. I could care less what happens to them. I like them. They're a nice little team, but I like all the Texas teams. And I got to admit, these Longhorns are looking a lot better than I thought they would. 1-3 doesn't quite say that, but overall, the Longhorns should have won yesterday's game. I really do believe that. Saturday's game. Because, let's be honest, if you watch that, you maybe thought there was some kind of fix-in on that game. And I like the officials. The officials, when they do a good job, I like to say they do a good job. When they do a bad job, I like to say they do a bad job. They're the third team that sometimes we talk about, sometimes we don't. In this case, if you're a Texas fan, even if you don't like to blame the officials, you should blame the officials for this loss. I'll tell you something. The Longhorns didn't do themselves any favors. Looking at the penalty stats, Oklahoma State had 7 penalties for 40 yards. University of Texas had 16 penalties for 128 yards. And honestly, usually if you're going to have that many penalties, you're going to lose. But mainly 2-3 of these penalties that were big calls by the officials, Texas did not deserve. And Texas ended up, beating themselves because that last punt that helped Oklahoma State get into field goal position to get the game-winning field goal went through the hands of the punter. And it's kind of funny because, or not if you're a Longhorn fan, but it's kind of reminiscent of the Cal game where they lost on an extra point, a missed extra point. Darius White, the Cal defensive back, said that he got a piece of that extra point. Replays kind of maybe show otherwise, but another faulty kick or special teams play that just cost the team the game. Well, for the most part. He gets that punt off. Who's to say Oklahoma State doesn't come down and make a field goal anyway? But at the same time, that punt that only went about 6 yards didn't really go over too well. And Texas also, they had a really strong first half. They had 2 defensive touchdowns. They only had 1 drive longer than 7 yards in the second half. That's usually not good. You can't do that against a ranked team. And they still hung in there despite all the penalties. But we got to talk about a couple of these penalties. First off, there was a defensive holding on defensive lineman Poona Ford. And if you watch that replay from every single angle available with the hundreds of cameras that they have at Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium, you will see that there was not a defensive holding. If anything, it was an offensive holding. Poona Ford gets double-teamed, and all of a sudden, he's just basically being hugged, wrapped up by both offensive linemen. It's a defensive holding call on what would have been a stop on a run play on third down. Instead, it's an automatic first down because of the defensive holding. So that's strike number 1. Immediately following that play, and this one's not even a joke. This is really what happened. And from my perspective, Coach Charlie Strong is totally annoyed and trying to, explain that to the official. The official talking to him is like literally breathing on his neck and following him. Charlie Strong is like pacing up and down because he's mad. He's trying to walk this off, and this ref is following him to hear what he's saying. And like, the Seinfeld term close talker? Yeah, it's like this guy was a close talker. This ref, I kid you not when I say that Charlie Strong could probably feel this ref's breath. So Charlie's going back and forth. This ref is following inches apart from him. Charlie stops. It looks to me that the ref bumps into him, and then he calls an unsportsmanlike conduct on Charlie Strong. That's another 15 yards, and this is an important part of the game because, hey, this is the game. This is the fourth quarter when this is happening, and all of a sudden, University of Texas is down 20 yards that they should have gotten a stop and gotten the ball back. Instead, that just brings life back into Oklahoma State's drive. So there's definitely some issues right there. You can look it up for yourself. If you have the Longhorn Network, I'm sure they're going to be replaying all of that. You can find it on the internet, I guarantee you. There's somebody who has like the entire conversation with Charlie Strong and that official, and you can't tell me that it doesn't look like the official almost like baited himself into creating the contact. He initiated the contact and then threw the flag. It almost even looks like he puffs out his chest and hits Charlie Strong in the shoulder. Who knows, maybe he'll say that Charlie Strong said something, but those officials do get an earful from the coaches every time. It's like you'd be surprised. Every time you see them talking, it's not usually a nice, hey, I disagree with that. There's probably some vulgar language in there, I mean, I can't say 100%, but there's probably some things that officials don't want to hear about how they're officiating when the head coaches of football teams disagree with their calls. It's a high-emotion sport. And in this case, honestly, can't lie to you, I feel like the University of Texas should have won that game, or at least they should have been in a better position to have won that game, because at the end, Texas beat themselves, but to get into that position, the officials made it hard for Texas to win that game. And the Longhorns, hey, you got to give them credit. They look a lot better than I thought they would be. I didn't think they would start 1-3, but maybe if I had really looked at the schedule, I would have said, maybe they will start 1-3. Cal isn't a bad team. Cal, if you kind of keep an eye on Cal, they have the best quarterback in college right now. He could go number 1 overall in Jared Goff. So that's kind of a rough one. Cal's defense wasn't too great, but I also think Gerard Hurd, who threw for 300 and rushed for 100 yards, becoming the second player to ever do that at the University of Texas, he's looking a little like Johnny Manziel out there. Now all he needs is a star receiver like Mike Evans and a better offensive line. But the Longhorns look like they improve on both ends, and they're consistently improving. They have a tough one against TCU next week, but the Longhorns, they're on the right pace. Look at some of these stats this week from Texas, Gerard's Hurd. 9 for 17, 119 yards, no passing touchdowns, threw an interception. That's not great, honestly, especially following last week's game, but now he's going up against a ranked defense that is also someone who's used to the Big 12 spread offenses. So Oklahoma State was ready for Gerard Hurd. I really liked the way they used Tyrone Swoops. Swoops came in, had 3 carries for 35 yards and a touchdown, and they seem ready to use Tyrone Swoops to get in there and get a couple run plays when they need to give Gerard Hurd a little bit of a break. And he also is good for short-distance third downs. I think he picked up a couple first downs, and I even was listening. I was on the. Admittedly, I didn't catch all of the game on TV. I went to a wedding this weekend. My friend and former roommate was getting married, and he happened to have it at the same time as the Longhorn game. And you're not going to hear any complaints from me, but he's a Longhorn fan, so it's kind of funny that I guess he didn't realize the scheduling, but you're going to miss a Longhorn game if you're getting married on a Saturday. That's just how it is. We all agreed from this point on, the group of friends, that we're not going to get married on football Saturdays anymore. So, I don't know. I'm probably not going to get married anytime soon, but it'll be a Tuesday probably, as long as it doesn't interfere with an NBA game. Yeah, I think that'd be the best bet. Probably saves me a lot of money on people coming as well. Not as many people would come to a Tuesday wedding as a Saturday wedding. Probably not many people have Tuesday weddings these days. Anyhow, back to the Texas game. I was watching most of it, and, thank goodness for the Watch ESPN app. Otherwise, I would just have been refreshing and, what happened? What happened? It would have been, highlights later to, really fill in everything. But had the Watch ESPN app out, and I was watching it. And, Texas overall, they didn't look bad. I'll give them that. Next week, they're probably not going to beat TCU. But after that, they have Oklahoma. Oklahoma's ranked. And anything can happen in the Red River rivalry. I want to go up to that game. I've never really seen one of those. This year it's not sold out, apparently. They still had 5,000 tickets last time I checked. So I think I want to go up to that game. Oklahoma's undefeated right now. Texas is looking down. But if Texas gives TCU a game, I wouldn't be surprised if they beat Oklahoma. I also wouldn't be surprised at all if they started off 1-5, because those are 2 tough matchups they got. Kansas State, they call K-State Purple Kryptonite. That's a team that Texas almost always seems to lose to. They're 3-0 right now. Iowa State, that could probably be a win. I think Texas is better than Iowa State. Texas has Kansas after that. They're definitely better than Kansas. West Virginia, they're 3-0 at the moment. It's a situation where Texas will be pretty solid against a lot of these teams. And then they visit Baylor in Waco to end the season. In all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised if Texas somehow struggled their way to 6-6. It also could be the worst season in Texas history in most of our lifetimes. I don't know how many people remember the 1956 season. My parents weren't even born at that point, and That's a while ago. So I couldn't really tell you. I don't know Texas history, but we want to quickly go through it. They're 1-3 right now. Say they lose to TCU and Oklahoma. That's 1-5. Maybe they pick up a win against Kansas State. That's 2-5. Beat Iowa State 3-5. Beat Kansas. That could be 4-5. And then Virginia Tech, Baylor. Those could be losses. So 4-win season for Charlie Strong in his second year. I don't know how people are going to react to that. Only thing that the Longhorns are playing for is to get better for next season. You're not going to make any good bowl games. You might not even make a bowl game. 6-6 gets you into bowl games, but hey, University of Texas, they need to get into a bowl game at least. It would be so weird to see Texas not in a bowl game. I think they did it actually recently. I think, 2010 they missed a bowl game. So, really, Texas has a lot of progress they need to make because overall, I like the steps that they're taking. Charlie Strong is not really trying to improve the record. He's trying to improve the culture. If the record improves along with it, that's great. Charlie Strong, he came into this situation, and this is the modern-day athlete problem, I feel like, especially if you're a big-time school like Texas. You're dealing with these kids who are entitled. They have this sense of entitlement. And it's not a coincidence that it happened around 2010 with Mac Brown. These guys feel like, honestly, Garrett Gilbert was probably the best high school quarterback I've ever seen. Not going to lie about that. I saw him. They put a lot of eggs in that Garrett Gilbert basket. But I also think they put a lot of eggs in these five-star recruits. And here's the problem with five-star recruits these days. They're being scouted from like the time they're sophomores in high school. I'm not going to lie. If I'm 15, 16 years old and University of Texas is offering me, I think that I would probably have had a little bit of a big head because, that must mean that I am playing pretty good out on the field. And in this day and age, these 15, 16, 17-year-olds, they're famous. They're getting people begging them to come to the school. They're on Twitter and Instagram, and people are like, oh, yeah, we'd love to have you at Texas. We'd love to have you at A&M. And Charlie Strong inherited a program where I felt a lot of these kids came in from high school thinking that, oh, I was a five-star player in high school, and now I'm going to come in and I'm just going to be just as good as I was in high school. Maybe not all of them, but honestly, it's hard to say that they aren't feeling that way. So Charlie Strong is trying to sense, hey, you need to get work ethic in. And he also, it's hard. You kind of want to, you got to praise these kids. It's like, this is why we like you. But also, these high school kids, I don't think they understand the level of talent they're going to be jumping from. Even if you're a 5A, 6A school in, Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, you're probably going to play with no more, and this is like a max, than 6 other Division I high school recruits. Probably 6, maybe 7. It depends on where you are. Maybe in the playoffs you'll run into it. For the most part, I'm trying to think. My graduating class, I think we had a couple guys that were offered to go to D1 schools. They didn't. You're talking about 22 guys out on the field, and you're head and shoulders the best one. Some of these guys might play D3. That's because they really love the game, and they're willing to go to these D3 schools that are more than happy to take them because, they want to field a team out there, and some of them are pretty good, and some of them aren't that good. But, they need to put out a team because, those Mary Hart and Baylors of the world, they're pretty elite. But you're talking about the, lower D3 schools, some of them maybe just getting going. Yeah, it's hard. So Texas brings in these 5-star guys that are beating up on the weaklings. You know what I mean? And everybody's just like, oh, this guy's going to be so good. People are telling these guys they're going to be so good. And all of a sudden, they're not. That's the thing. They maybe get a little complacent. They don't understand that it takes a lot of hard work to really hit that stride. You're a freshman, you're a 5-star recruit. You're still a freshman. You know, what you did in high school, hey, cool, it got you to this point, doesn't mean anything now. And I think Charlie Strong inherited a situation where he's just like, okay, hey, look, the seniors this year on the University of Texas, think about this, if you understand Texas history. The seniors on this year's squad have never won 10 games. They're not going to ever win 10 games. This entire class, they're not going to win 10 games this season. They've already lost 3. So this senior class of Longhorns experienced 4 years, no 10-game season, no 10-game win season. I think that's incredible. And, you know, like I said, it comes down to you're living in Austin. Austin's probably one of the greatest cities in the world. It is one of the greatest cities in the world. And, you know, you're on one of the coolest campuses around because you're in downtown Austin. And, you know, there's 6th Street. You're famous because people know who you are. You're that big-time recruit. I would get big-headed. I'm not going to lie. And that's what Charlie Strong is trying to do here. He's trying to change that culture of, hey, yeah, there's a reason we like you, but there are 3-star recruits that we didn't get that are working harder than you, and they're going to be better than you. And Charlie needs everybody to understand that you have to go out there. It's not what you do on Saturdays all the times. It's what you do before Saturday that matters, and that'll make you that much better on Saturday. Some of these guys just don't get it. Some of these guys come in, they're like, yeah, I'll practice. I'll be ready to go. You got to outcompete them. You know, you got to outwork them. The 5 days leading up to Saturday, you got to be focused. You got to be ready. High school, they don't prepare you to be a Texas Longhorn, to be a Division I football FBS athlete. It is a full-time job. I'll tell you what, I was never a student athlete, but I kind of lived the lifestyle a little bit when I was broadcasting for Texas State. You know, I had to deal with going to games and going to classes, and you know, I was with the football team sometimes. I was with the women's basketball team, the men's basketball team, you know, the baseball teams. I didn't have to practice, you know, and I was a full-time student. I can't lie to you. It is a hard job, and football especially requires a lot of mental focus. And I don't know what to tell you other than some of these guys aren't ready for it, and some of them never will be ready for it. There was a guy that was a big-time recruit. I think he was one of the Florida 5, the Longhorn fans like to call them. 5 recruits from Florida that were big-time recruits that they picked up. And like a week, 2 weeks into the season, he was just like, I'm homesick, I'm going to leave. And he left, and, you know, that's one major recruit down for Charlie Strong. And the real question is, do you want that guy on your football team? Sure, he might have been a big-time Power 5 recruit, but we're talking about a guy who couldn't get over homesickness. And, you know, maybe there's something there, too, because everybody starts off college, if they're away from home, with a little bit of homesickness. I can tell you that I even felt it, you know, my first semester in college. Every time I came home, it was like, I'm comfortable here. You know, college is about breaking out of your comfort zone. You're experiencing new things. You're still a kid, but there's no parental supervision, you know, and some people can't handle that freedom. Some people don't understand the new situation. They can't adapt. And there's a lot of things that go into being a college athlete that people don't really learn, and that's part of the problem here for Texas. They kind of view these guys as pieces of a chess game. They're not people. They eventually stop being people. And Mac Brown was always the greatest at, you know, shaking your hand, making you feel welcome. You always get a good vibe from him. But at a certain point, he almost became just like a figurehead. It's like, oh, wow, get to play for Mac Brown. And, you know, it kind of got out of control there for a little bit. Now, Charlie Strong, he's really just trying to make sure everybody stands firm. You know, it has to be about the team. It has to be about working hard. And the next year is Texas' year. They're just trying to improve every single game from this point. I'll tell you what, Texas could easily be 3-1. Their only loss coming from Notre Dame. They could have beaten Cal. They fought back from down, 45-24. I think it was 45-24 at one point, and then Texas came back from that and just missed that extra point that would have tied it at 45. And with the momentum they had, Texas probably would have won in overtime. I think 80% of the time the home team wins in overtime. Texas probably could have beaten them. Take away those just ridiculous penalties, and Texas beats Oklahoma State, in my opinion. And now we're kind of saying, 1-3, the next two games are going to be rough. I think Iowa State and Kansas are going to be wins, but Kansas State might be hard to beat. Baylor's going to be tough to beat. It's not good. It's not looking good in terms of the full outlook of the season. But Texas is not as bad as their 1-3 record. And that's got to be the optimistic view that fans have to take for the Longhorns, because they really do need to start. It starts with the culture, and then it'll come out on the field what'll happen. I like Charlie Strong. Second year, he's going to be fine. He still has a lot of work to do, but I like the progress that he's made, and he's made a lot of progress quicker than I thought he would. Granted, people are probably going to be a little, upset with the end result of this season. Overall, I think Charlie Strong is on the right path to have a successful career at Texas. You need to give him at least another year, 2 more years, before you kind of see what happens. That's why he signed a 5-year contract. You got to let him bring in his own guys. You got to let him get out the bad guys. He made a lot of changes as soon as he came in, and that's going to be the main thing for the Longhorns. Changing the culture, then you can improve the record. Improve the culture, really, and then improve the record. So that's about it. I rambled enough on the Longhorns, and I went off on little tangents. That's why it's called the Daily Ramble. If you're still patient enough to have listened to this far, thank you very much. Doesn't look like anyone's listened live up to this point, but oh well. That's how it goes. Moving on to the Texas A&M Aggies. They won over Arkansas up in Jerry World, 28-21. That was technically an Arkansas home game. Last year it was technically a Texas A&M game, as the two schools opened up conference play. A&M won in overtime, 28-21. Got to be honest with you, Aggies are kind of repeating what happened last season. Arizona State and South Carolina, they're kind of similar in terms of preseason they were overrated. I don't even know why we do these preseason polls sometimes. Look at some teams, they're just, it's whatever. In this case, I think it's going to be similar progress, and let's see what happens now as they get into the meat of their schedule. The second week they beat Nevada. That's a Big West team that's decent sometimes. I think it's a solid team to have. Maybe they could be really good. Maybe they could be all right. I don't think they're ever going to be bad. We'll see. The Wolfpack are solid. But now the real first test was Arkansas, and Texas A&M narrowly defeats Arkansas. They did that last year. Next week, I'll actually be at this game. They play Mississippi State, and Mississippi State is a tough team. Let me pull up the entire standings right now, but that's the Sun Belt. I want to know why my score's going off. There you go. SEC West, Mississippi State 3-1. They're 1-1 in conference play, and so far, Mississippi State's only loss was to LSU, and everybody can understand that. LSU's ranked 14th right now. They'll be climbing into the top 10 very soon. And Mississippi State beat Auburn last week 17-9. You hold Auburn to 9 points, that's pretty good offense or defense, I think. They also they defeated Northwestern State 62-13. That's not important. They also beat Southern Miss 34-16. Southern Miss doesn't have a bad offense, so Mississippi State, their only real test was against LSU, and that was a close one. They lost by less than a field goal. A field goal would have won it for Mississippi State. In fact, looking at it right now, looks like Mississippi State almost had a comeback. They scored 13 in the fourth against LSU, and they could have probably 3 more points, they win that one. So Mississippi State's definitely going to be a tough one for Texas A&M. Aggies, they like I said, they start their meat of the schedule. They're in the SEC West. They're tied for third along with Mississippi and LSU. This is the real interesting part of their schedule, and I like Kyle Allen. I think this is going to be the difference between last year and this season for Texas A&M. Kyle Allen is out there. Kenny Hill kind of lost the job on his own, had a couple bad games, and then I think there was some misconduct off the field that led to Kenny Hill kind of being gone, and Kyle Allen maybe got a little comfortable as the starting quarterback. I like what Kevin Sumlin is doing where he has Kyler Murray on the sideline ready to go at any second, and sometimes he might even just throw Murray in there, and I like what I see from Kyler Murray. For those of you who don't know, Murray is the all-time winningest quarterback in Texas high school history. Yeah, that's kind of crazy to think about. He didn't attempt to pass Saturday, but he rushed 5 times for 27 yards. He kind of has like a little elusiveness to him. He has good speed, and someone likes that. I'd like to see him, throw a little bit more. I haven't seen him too much because Kyle Allen has done a good job keeping his spot. It's a stat-laden system, but Kyle Allen completed 21 of 28 passes for 358 yards and 2 touchdowns against Arkansas. And he also, can be mobile around the pocket and in the backfield. He's not going to be a takeoff and run guy like Murray or Johnny Manziel were, but Kyle Allen kind of fits this role that Case Keenum had at U of H for Kevin Sumlin. He's a really good passer. He can hit targets anywhere on the field, and that's really kind of what you want in a spread offense. Johnny Manziel was special. He could pass and he could run, and you're not going to get another Johnny Manziel probably ever if you're Kevin Sumlin. So, they have a 5-star recruit coming in next year, too, at the quarterback position. So I like what Sumlin is doing in terms of he's keeping his quarterback honest. Kyle Allen, he's fighting for his position every week. Murray is back there ready to go. I think he was 42-0 at Allen High School in Dallas as a quarterback. And so far on the season, he's 15 of 27. That's only 55% completion percentage when he passes. Has 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But in 16 carries, he has 102 yards. He averages 7.8 yards per carry. Kyler Murray, I'm telling you, he's only 5'11", 188. But he's definitely someone that you should keep an eye out for if you're watching these Texas A&M games, because he's going to come in every game, I think. And Kyle Allen pretty much needs to understand that even if he's playing well, Murray's going to get a couple chances to go out there and show what he can do. So it always keeps Kyle Allen in line. And Allen on the season, he's completing 65% of his passes. He's almost at 1,000 yards passing and 11 touchdowns. Only 2 picks through these 4 games. He's carried the ball 28 times for 71 yards, meaning he's averaging about 5 yards, and he has 2 rushing touchdowns. So Kyle Allen in his sophomore year, 6'3", 210, he can really work. And I think that's the quarterback of the future for Texas A&M, but that's also a heavily noticed by the professionals programs. Everybody likes Kevin Sumlin at the pro level from what I understand. And I think you're talking about Kyle Allen probably being gone after his junior year if he keeps up these kind of numbers. And, Kyler Murray probably has 2 years of eligibility that he kind of gets to show what he can do. This other guy's coming in. That's kind of a difficult game to play where it's like, hey, you make sure because I got somebody right behind you. I wish I could be a fly on the wall of some of those meetings because Kevin Sumlin talking to his quarterbacks, I imagine that's a very stern but very positive, hey, I believe in both of you. That means that both of you are going to get chances. Right now we're going with the guy who has experience, the guy who took us there last year. We're seeing how he progresses. But, hey, Kyle, Kyler's pretty good too. So we want you two to both be ready to go at any moment because you never know, God forbid, there's an injury. And we need one of you to step up. So, hey, I really like what someone's done there. And someone was the main reason. Him and Johnny Manziel are the reasons that it's really cool to be at Texas A&M. I remember before the Aggies went to the SEC and, right when they announced they were going to the SEC, it was kind of what are they doing? They're kind of mediocre in the Big 12. How are they going to fare in the best conference? And Johnny obviously was a big part of why they weren't. They were just lower than Alabama Johnny's first year, and even though they had 2 losses, they only barely lost to Florida and they barely lost to LSU. But the Aggies, it's cool to be an Aggie now. The Aggies are stealing recruits from Texas, and that was almost unheard of when they were in the Big 12. I think Texas A&M has a really good momentum right now, and they're only going to get better. But this is where their schedule starts. They got Mississippi State this week. I really do think that it's going to be a tough little stretch here for the Aggies. They play Alabama right after that, and it's at Kyle Field, so that's going to be a fun one, especially considering last year. I don't remember the score. I'm going to guess off the top of my head. It was like 59-0. But the Johnny Manziel matchups with Alabama, those were so much fun. Oh, my goodness. Obviously, the upset when Johnny was a freshman, and then I think it was like 49-43 final score when Alabama visited A&M for the rematch. That game was every bit as advertised. But then after Alabama, Texas A&M travels to Mississippi, that's a rough game. So Texas A&M, they're going to have to show their true colors here. Can they win at home? They're ranked 14th. They're going up against 21 Mississippi State. That's a 6:30 kickoff at Kyle Field. Hey, I'm excited about that one. I'm going to go out there, and I told you guys how I'm just a Texas fan. I can sing Texas State, University of Texas, and Texas A&M's fight songs. I go out there, I'm going to wear whatever school colors of the Texas school that I'm supporting. I'm going to sing their fight song. There is no more fun experience than going to a Texas A&M game if you're going to a Texas college football game. They have like 500,000 Aggies just all around Kyle Field before the game. Kyle Field, oh my goodness, I'm excited to see that. That's the nicest stadium now. They put in, what I think, $450 million, about $500 million to renovate Kyle Field. If you haven't seen it, why don't you just look it up right now? Go to Google, check out the renovated Kyle Field. I figure that'll be fine if you put that into image search. It looks really good. It looks modern, and it also looks old school. It's brick. They have it to where like the sound stays trapped, and the bowl is closed, so none of the sound can escape like it could in previous years. And hey, it was the loudest stadium I've ever been in when sound could escape out the south end zone. And these Aggies, they take their football seriously. Luckily, my friend has graduated now, but geez, when we were in the student section, oh my goodness, they stand the entire game. It's halftime. I'm like, oh good, I get to take a little break right now. They're like, nope, stand up. We have the marching band coming out. It's like, you stand for the marching band? Yep. They're serious about their football team, and they enjoy it. I got to tell you, the Aggie War Hymn is what they call their fight song. It's a really fun fight song, even though the entire thing is just anti-Texas. It's like you got to love how much they don't like their rival. And, it kind of doesn't make sense because soon they'll be, 3 years, 4 years removed? It's 4 years removed since they last played Texas. Since they left the Big 12, this is their 4th year in SEC play. They need to get that rivalry going again. That would be awesome. Yeah, Texas A&M, though, definitely starting up to see, are they for real? Can they make the playoffs? Seriously, think about this. Texas A&M goes undefeated over these next 3 games. which will be hard but possible. Mississippi State, Alabama, Texas A&M. Then they kind of have a little bit of an easy schedule from that point on. They have South Carolina, who's 2-2 right now, and I think if they can, get through the Mississippi and Alabama games as well as Mississippi State, they can beat South Carolina pretty easily. Auburn, I think they could beat Auburn right now. Western Carolina and FCS schools actually on their schedule late because, as I said, they started off with Arizona State and Ball State. I guess they're adding an FCS school on there. Ball State's FBS, I believe. They're from the MAC conference, I think. Then they play Vanderbilt. They can beat Vandy easily. The final game of the season, which has become a fun rivalry on Thanksgiving, is Texas A&M LSU. That's in Death Valley over in Baton Rouge. Oh, I'm looking forward to that one. If Texas A&M is undefeated and LSU is undefeated, we're talking about a playoff spot. Hey, that could be so much fun. That's the last game of the season. Oh, that could just be so much fun. I'm looking forward to this football season as we get into the meat of it when we're talking about, okay, conference play is going. We know who's good. We know who might be in it. We're probably about 4 weeks away from projecting who's going to make the playoffs. It's way too early right now. Anybody picks up one loss, they could be out of it. Anybody picks up 2 losses, they're definitely out of it. But, hey, we're talking playoffs, and I think the SEC always produces at least one, I would bet. I say always. They only had one last year, but SEC will produce one. I'm thinking Texas A&M might have a chance. Maybe. That's just my Texas bias a little bit, I think. But, like I said, these next 3 games for Texas A&M, they could probably jump into the top 5, especially if they beat Mississippi. At Mississippi, that'll be extremely difficult. But if they're for real, if the Aggies are for real, this is their testing time. These next 3 games will determine what the Aggies do the rest of the way. Do they make a mediocre bowl game, or do they go ahead and make the playoffs, or make a really good bowl game, if not that? I enjoy the Aggies. They're the best team in Texas at the moment, in my opinion. I think U of H might actually be right behind them I forget about TCU and Baylor. That's my fault. I do think Texas A&M is better than Baylor, but it's going to be hard to prove that because they don't play each other. And U of H is 4th best in that case. And it's hard to kind of say that because, U of H is a mid-major as well in the American Athletic Conference. But it would be fun if these Texas teams could play each other, by the way. We have, if I'm not mistaken, 8 Division I schools for FBS. So Aggies are up there, and we kind of talk about it. Texas, they could be the 5th, 6th best Texas team. I don't know. Probably up there, like 5th, 6th. Texas A&M, though, they're going to be a team I keep an eye on. 3 straight really tough games. I'm going to the first of which, the Mississippi State game. Alabama, Texas A&M is going to be a lot of fun. There's a bye week for A&M right before that, so I'm pretty sure if A&M, can pick up some momentum, and Alabama stays only with 1 loss before that, which they probably will. Hey, Texas A&M, telling you, keep an eye out for them. All right, guys, that pretty much does it. I rambled on enough today. Talk some Longhorns, talk some Aggies. Tomorrow, I get this all the time. It's football season, Karl. It's football season. I love the NBA. I already have 2K16. I got it Thursday night at 11. I've been playing through it. I've already done the Spike Lee part of the My Career mode. It only took me until Sunday, and the only reason I didn't do it Saturday is because I had that wedding. It's NBA season already, and football's my favorite sport until basketball season starts. That's what a friend of mine, Brandon Jones, said, and I pretty much agree with that. I like football a lot, but when it comes to hoops, I'm ready to go. As soon as I'm done here, I'm about to play me a little 2K. I'm looking forward to it, though. Yeah, but after that, I'm going to go on NBA.com. I'm going to check out what everybody has to say. I can guarantee you that there's a lot of players who drop 15 pounds or put on muscle, or they've improved their shot and they're ready for an MVP season, or they're ready to make the All-Star game, and what teams have their goals to be. Oh, I love it all. I can't wait. It's gonna be a fun NBA season. It's gonna be a fun college football season too. Didn't even really touch too much on the NFL. My Eagles finally pick up a win. I didn't watch the game, but I was just like, you know what? Maybe I'm a curse because I watched the first couple games and I was just like, oh, this is terrible. But geez, they looked good for a half against Atlanta, and they pretty much looked good for a half against the Jets. When Chip Kelly finally figures out how to get his teams to play 4 quarters, the Eagles could be one of the best teams in the NFC, but they can definitely be the best team in the NFC East, especially the way things are. And it's muted, but maybe it'll be unmuted because I think I tried to do the proper things to get it unmuted on YouTube. You can hear me ramble about how Eli Manning, is terrible, and I think I even said at the end of it, it's like, now that I trash Eli, he's about to go on one of these winning streaks that he goes on. Giants went on two 3-game winning streaks last year. That accounted for all 6 of their wins. And both of those win streaks, were eventually irrelevant. And that's what this Giants winning streak is about to be. But in their defense, the Giants could be 3-0. They cost themselves that game against Dallas. They choked away a lead against Atlanta, and obviously they pretty much had that game well in hand against the Redskins. And the Redskins, oh my goodness, Kirk Cousins, need to get him out of there. I understand you're not going to play RG3. Put in Colt McCoy. That's all I'm begging you. Jay Gruden. It's sad to see RG3 out there in street clothes. He's not even wearing pads. He's not even ready to go because he's making $16 million and they've decided you're the 3rd-string quarterback. Get Kirk Cousins out of there. I don't care if you put in RG3 or Colt McCoy. I would rather see one of those 2 Texas quarterbacks get their rub over someone who, so far in his career, I think he's thrown fewer passes than DeMarcus Russell, and he has just as many interceptions. It looked bad out there sometimes. What did he throw? 2, 3 picks? Let me pull that up real quick from Thursday night's game. But yeah, telling you, the defense of Washington, they actually are, I think if I'm not mistaken, they're the statistic best run defense in the league. They know how to stop the run. Alfred Morris, Matt Jones, they didn't do what they had been doing up to that point of the season. They're dealing with Deshaun Jackson being out, but that's no excuse for Kirk Cousins to throw 2 picks. He completed 30 of 49 passes, missed 19, so that, that's a little better than 50%. I bet you Colt McCoy could go out there and do just as good, probably better. It's funny, I listen to Sports Talk here in Austin, 104.9 The Horn, and they have this commercial for LASIK, and Colt McCoy is like, oh, it took me years to get LASIK, but now I can spot out leaves on trees, like individual leaves on trees, and it's like, geez, hey, he has better eyesight now. Put him in. Maybe he can read that blitz a little bit better. Give him his chance. I just like Colt McCoy. I like RG3. I saw RG3 break records against Kansas his 2 years before he came into the NFL. Like the year that RG3 won the Heisman, I was there for one of his games. I like RG3. I want him to get out there and play a little bit. We'll talk some NFL a little bit later in the week. Tomorrow we're going to talk NBA. I might have a guest. I might not. I'm trying to figure that out. But for now, just me. At the end of this live broadcast, it looks like we had 0 listeners. We're going to have to change that. I'm going to have to get on my social media. I'm also probably going to have to figure out that no one is doing much at 1. I mean, people are probably working at 1 o'clock on Mondays, but oh well. You can always listen to this one afterwards. I'm going to try and keep doing these daily now. I only did one last week. That was my fault, and it got muted. That's also my fault. Apparently, copyright laws are kind of different. They don't have the Fair Use Act or whatever on YouTube for everything. I played that Drake song. I was just like, hey, check this out. It's called Jumpman. I only played like 15 seconds of it. I thought that was plenty of time because I think usually you're allowed 30. Nope. In this case, I think any part of that song being played, just like a couple seconds, would probably cost me copyright. We went 51 minutes today. Thanks for tuning in, and hope everyone has a great rest of their Monday, and I'll be back at it tomorrow. Thanks, Ramblers.